all things Bulldogs. G'day Doggies fans, haven't done one of a post for a couple of weeks. New South Wales Cup teams into the prelim against Newtown. That's going to be tough. I've got some wisdom from Shane Warne, which will give some context. It really sort of sums up where our team's been the last few years. We've won 13 games out of our last 75 matches, which is horrible. But the good sign of that is it's 8 out of the last 24. And then before that it was 5 from the previous 51. That's a horrible record under anyone's assessment. But in saying that, there's green shoots. And, you know, since Potter made a couple of positional changes in the side, Averillo came to fullback. 11 rounds out, or 12 rounds out from the end of the season, and we won 5 matches. You know, that's that sort of stuff. Now, he had some really good games and he had some quiet games. You can see he's trying to develop his game there. For fullbacks, it's all about their legs, you know, and how much work they can get through. And it's hard to make the transition. A full pre-season there, we're going to see a better player. And with Credence Toya also there, I think our depth might be sorted out of those two. Now, there's more to talk about. We've got wisdom from Shane Warne, which I want to share, and a couple of prospective signings. So, one of the first ones, Bronson Xerri for 2024. I think he's going to get a lot of interest. I was told 2 months ago by one of the great Doggies fans, as a member of a lot of the groups. I won't mention names, but he told me in strict confidence that he spoke to a family member just doing his work. He knows this guy's a very close family member of Bronson Xerri, and he said Bronson was in with the Dogs a couple of months ago, so before Serrato was even on the board, while Barrett was still the coach. They were talking with him about his return for 2024. So Dogs will be given first crack at him, it seems. And I think if the money's right and the opportunity's right, he will be a Bulldog in 2024. But don't be surprised if he commands more money than what a club like us want to pay at this point in time. Gus is all about value in the cap. And, you know, there'll be a couple of signings where you'll feel it's too much, but then you'll see signings where he tries to get like for like. If you're going to replace a player in the squad that's not in a key position, not a superstar, you try and replace him with someone who's going to be worth the same, you can pay less for him. And I think he's done that with Andrew Davey. Davey had a Twitter post saying with Bulldogs written on it, like, so I think they're just waiting for the cap to be announced on how much it's going to go up by, so that they can fit Andrew in. You'd expect it would be a budget signing. There's talk of Tom Carr probably coming as a New South Wales recruit, New South Wales Cup recruit, and that sort of thing. So, you know, you got Jaden Ockenbaugh till end of 23. I doubt he'll go anywhere, to be honest. And maybe a player like Bronson Xerri will be on Ockenbaugh money, because I think Ockenbaugh, as much as I value his service, and he's a young kid, and he's trying to do his best, but his confidence is shot, and the fans just, from a fan's point of view, he's the majority of fans are happy to see the back of Jaden, and that's really sad, but that's just the way it is. That is just the way it is. We can't change what people think. At the end of the day, that's how they feel about it. And, you know, Jaden does a lot of good off the field as well. So I hope he has a really great year. You know, if he gets an opportunity in first grade in 2023, I hope he, you know, demonstrates the potential that many thought that he had. But it just seems to be something lacking with his game, with his intensity sometimes, and that's what people question. But good luck to that. All right, so we've got assistant coaches. Mick Potter looks like he's got a job as an assistant coach. They're bringing in some Bulldogs DNA around the cultural signings, mentoring signings. So Andrew Ryan, Mark O'Mealy, Shrek. You've got Jason Hetherington in the landscape. There's lots of good stuff happening with the Bulldogs. There's a few fans up in arms about the potential assistant coach signing of Chad Randall. Now, honestly, I think to look on these things and go, really? Did we ever care who an assistant coach was? When does this assistant coach be liable for a team's results? When they're winning or when they're losing? You know, it's so much noise made about people who are wanting perception-based actions from their managers. I really think that Gus and Curry and co have got it right. I think that what they're doing is giving the fans things that they want. So you got that mixture of the Bulldogs DNA with those players I mentioned. You've got re-signings of Max King, Raymond Fatala-Mariner, Jacob Carraz, all getting extensions. You know, there's lots of good stuff happening there. And I think that, you know, they have to take some risks and they have to give some opportunities. And they would know why, you know, they're not just going to go hire Chad Randall because because he's a mate or they want to destroy the club or whatever else. Like, there's obvious performance-based reasons for it. The guy obviously can coach. You know, Phil Gould isn't born yesterday. He's not just out there, you know, doing political stuff for his mates. That's more what Ray Dibb and that did. Yes, men. Who, you know, sat there and helped all their business mates out and stuff. And I'll tell you what, you know, the fact is all of these guys love the Bulldogs. Everyone wants to win a premiership. Sometimes they get it horribly wrong. But I think since we've had the last change with Curry and into that key role, he's been around for a bit and he's been helping with the juniors. We've got Gus there. You know, Warburton's young and full of energy. They're all doing their best under very trying circumstances. And I think we just have to trust them and give them that time to rebuild. We can't be sitting there holding them at ransom. It doesn't work. When you hold people at ransom, they make stupid decisions. And that's what I want to talk about with Shane Warne. And this is what I'll leave everyone with. Right? Shane Warne, he said, listening after he died, I listened to a lot of stuff that he said. And he said the successful eras in Australian cricket were born from the fact that they did such a good job transitioning talent and keeping experienced people in the club, like in the team. And if you've got a lot of stars, the thing is, people who have good job security don't have to be conservative, if that makes sense. So that's what he said, because he played his best cricket when he was a bit older, when he knew that he was going to be picked for the next 10 games, whether he made mistakes or not. It wouldn't matter. So that's what he said. He could sit there and take risks and cop some bad overs and to try and do things that if it was another player that was just coming in and who was new, if they did those things and it backfired, they'd lose their place in the side. Whereas because he had that job security of knowing that he was in the team, he was just able to take those risks. And he said some of the best balls that he ever bowled, some of the greatest wickets that he ever took, were purely based on the fact that he had that that security in his role, that he knew he could take the gamble. And if we look at the Bulldogs players, the fact that we have had so much turnover in our top 30 in the last 3 years, the fact that we've used, 35 players this year and 35 players last year who played, with so many debutants, like 10 or 12 debutants over the last 2 years, what that means is that, and so many people off contract, that's why we couldn't score points, if that makes sense. We would have games where they'd control the ball, they're all scared of losing their position. You probably only had 2 or 3 players in the team who were like guaranteed to be picked the next week if they made mistakes for 5 weeks in a row. I know a lot of players, a lot of fans kept saying, "Oh, why is Averillo still on the side? Why is Ockenball? Oh, Trent Barrett must be blackmailing the coach or something," and stuff like that. But for the most part, the halves never had time to get experience. The key positions, we'd get an injury in a key position with an experienced player. When we had 4 in there, he was constantly injured. When he played and put back-to-back weeks together, we'd start to get a couple of wins. The wins had come. 2019, we went all right. We were a chance at playing finals. A really low chance, but we were still a chance, with 7 or 8 rounds to go. So that's what I'm talking about. You've got to look at context, and the fact of the matter is that we just don't have those key players in key positions that were able to take risks and not fear failure. And that's what it comes down to. The best teams know that they can take risks. They're not going to drop Cameron Munster because he'll keep taking risks, and if he fails, he'll still take a risk again. He won't go into his shell. And that's what I'm talking about. And it'll pay off, and they'll win. On the big moment, on the big play, they'll win. They'll get the win. Whereas at Canterbury, if Jake Averillo puts a chip through and it fails, that's what he did in round 2 against the Broncos. We won against the Cowboys, in which it was a pretty even forwards effort. We probably just won the forward battle in that game, and they did enough to win the game. Against the Broncos, we should have won that game. Averillo was at halfback. Then he was dropped and Wakeham got elevated to halfback. Right? And what happened in that game? Averillo did a little chip. He backed himself and it failed. And then he was booted out of the team. He was changed to another position in the side. And that's what was wrong with our side under Trent Barrett, and even under Pay towards the end. They just had no ability. You had so many players coming off contract who probably knew they weren't going to get another contract, and so afraid to play football, so afraid to make mistakes. And then, the game would be gone, and then they'd start trying to play catch up, and it'd just it just looked terrible. That's what happened. And how many games did we lose seeing that happen, seeing us down 16-0 after 20 minutes? There was plenty of those games. We'd be the majority of games down at half time by 12 points or more. You just can't win those matches. It just doesn't happen. And that's what Shane Warne was talking about. But it's funny. This year we had Matt Burton coming to the club and Josh Addo-Carr. Now those 2 players take risks. Addo-Carr's, how many risks did he take running out to get intercepts? Plenty, and he got us wins. Every win we had intercepts in it. Isn't that funny? I think all but one game that we won, we got intercepts. That's got to tell you something. We had players willing to take risks. We had games where our forward pack couldn't make 30 metres. And then Matt Burton comes and kicks the ball and turned it into a good set off the kick. or we got a repeat set when they dropped the bomb, or he got a 4-20. And the thing about Matt Burton is that if he came to the Bulldogs the year before, I don't think he would be playing Origin. The best thing to happen was that he stayed at the Penrith Panthers and he got that experience in first grade for 12 months. He got Daly M Centre of the Year. He just had to focus on doing that job, make his tackles, let that champion spine direct him around. And it worked wonders. Then he comes to Canterbury and, we lose the forward battle and people say, oh, Burton should be a centre, people have no idea. And we need to be grateful that our coaches and that don't listen to fans all the time. In order to try to put people down, like winning and losing is the business at the end of the day, and we've just been losing so much. But it's hard to get traction, and you've got to understand, a player like Matt Burton, we're lucky. He did things in games which he pulled the trigger and failed. But guess what? He'd pull it again and succeed. Addo Carr would jump out of the line, miss the intercept, they'd score. Then in the next game, he'd do it twice and get the intercept, and we win. Aaron Schopp got quite a few intercepts. Players taking risks. So, yeah, mate. Mate. Players which have more job security in their role are going to take more risks in a team sport, and they'll get rewarded more for those risks. When we had a coach that seemed to have everyone on notice constantly, and if people failed, with so many young kids, with so many players with hardly any experience, with a lack of quality in key positions and a forward pack that rarely won the battle, the fact that so many players just been rubbish continually throughout their careers, it's just horrible. And I really hope Serraldo can just stand firm and give some of these players the opportunity. But the big thing that our Bulldogs have got to do next year is win that ruck battle. So the likes of Patolo he just has to stand up next year. And he was showing a bit of form at the end, which is really, really good. I think he's got potential. He just hasn't been able to get any longevity into his game. And big bodies, they need to keep playing footy. That's what any of the coaches have said to me that I've spoken to. And you just see it. When Tavita sits there and plays longer minutes and plays more games, he plays better. It's as simple as that. And that's what Patolo's got to do. That's what Max King, the fact that he's had them horrible injuries, but he's got to play a full season, and by the end of the year, he was our best forward. And he was pretty good from the start. Like, he come in and made a difference. But he's not the biggest guy, and he can't do it alone. So Tavita has to step up and run big meters in the middle. If our forwards can get on top and win that ruck, we've got the attack, and we've got the players with the ability to take risks in Carraz, in the Fox, in Burton, even in Avarillo. If we can just get behind them and not crucify every mistake and instead focus on, the fact that it was the right play, they just didn't execute it. That's what it's all got to be about. And I think under Barrett, we just didn't have enough quality players in key positions to take advantage of things, and there had way too many people playing conservatively because they didn't have any job security in their role. And that comes from Shane Warne, and I think it's 100% right. And I think the if fans can look at that sort of philosophy, if our players made the right play, we got it wrong, or if they passed when they shouldn't have, or they didn't pass, you can still see that the play was right. They just took one poor option, And obviously they're going to learn from that, and we can learn from it too. And get behind this team, because we are going to get there in the end. Don't you worry about that. We will get there. we've got the right people in our club at the moment. And a few more signings, and it's going to look really, really good. Anyway, guys, thanks for listening. 20 minutes is a long time for a post, but really wanted to make that point about what Shane Warne said, and because I think it's really, really relevant. Take care, guys, and hopefully we can be playing the Penrith Panthers in the grand final for New South Wales Cup.